Hey, what's up? Mark here from WayCoolNews.net, back again for another new and exciting toy review. Today we are taking a look at the deluxe Shao Kahn figure from the Mortal Kombat video game line by Jazwares. This figure helps us celebrate the 20th anniversary of the Mortal Kombat video game series. From its original venue of arcades to the gaming consoles of today, Mortal Kombat has had a very successful run. And I'm very happy to see that success deservedly commemorated with a great action figure like this one here today. The back of the packaging features some especially cool character art of Shao Kahn beside his bio. And of course, one of the most exciting details about the back of the packaging is the two character images for Liu Kang and Goro. Hopefully, we'll be seeing action figures of the two very shortly, possibly a part of the 20th anniversary as well. This figure comes in around 7 inches tall and will fit in seamlessly next to the rest of your Mortal Kombat figures by Jazwares. Shao Kahn comes sculpted with his helmet on his face. Some people might have preferred the helmet to be removable, but it's definitely not something that is necessary. Granted, we know that he's bald from past games, however this figure is based off the most recent game, which does not show him unhelmeted. The sculpt work in the helmet and face isn't bad and captures a decent likeness to how he was seen in the video game. The eyes are painted an accurate fiery glow of red. The skull face portion of Shao Kahn's helmet seems a little darker in color than I believe it should be though. I would have liked to see a little bit more closer to an actual bone color than the gray mixture we see here. The head sculpt isn't loaded with detail, but still decently captures Shao Kahn's likeness. Jazwares did a great job recreating the attire of Shao Kahn from the video game, and I'll give them points there. However, before we can get into all those wins, let's first take a look at just the base body. One of the small issues I have with this figure is the differing skin tones. For example, the chest seems a bit darker than the upper arms, but the forearms seem to be a much lighter color than the upper arms. Shao Kahn's armor shares the same deep red-brown mixture highlighted by gold detailing. The spikes share the same light gray color and are sculpted nicely. Consistency is not a problem at all here. One of my favorite things about Shao Kahn's attire is the skulls seen across the chest straps and belt piece. They're once again painted a little too dark like the skull from the helmet, but it doesn't seem to bother me as much here. In fact, it seems that the darker color creates a color wash-like presence and only helps bring out the detail of these finely sculpted parts. The rest of Shao Kahn's belt is colored in black with highlights of gold on the trimming. The loincloth piece is made of a pliable plastic, much like the way we see figures like Masters of the Universe classics receive. It's soft and movable, but not too bendy. This is a major win here and should not be overlooked. Companies like Mattel had to constantly hear from their fans and consumers to make a change like this. And so, this initiative of a company like Jazwares to find successful approaches and instill them in their own products is very admirable, and I commend them for that. The sculpting for the scaled armor on the sides of Shao Kahn's thighs is nice, but still has some issues. Even when the leg sculpt is perfectly lined up, the sculpt doesn't exactly line up. The upper thigh just above the swivel sits a little bit over the rest of the thigh and extrudes just a bit. It's not horrendous or extremely noticeable, but it is my job to point these sort of things out. It seems to me that the problem was the joint that creates the swiveling function isn't perfectly centered. It's worth recognizing too that this might only be an issue on my figure. I do have a few small issues with some of the paint applications. The hinges in the wrists are molded in a skin tone base while being surrounded by the black gloves. I would have liked to have seen this hinge molded in a black base instead. Things like this are very obvious and really interrupt the aesthetic flow to the figure. It's once again seen at the very top of the thigh near the waist with skin tone hinges instead of the dark color of the scaled thigh armor. On the back of Shao Kahn, the strapping that goes down his back seemed to end by the time it hits the top of that ab crunch joint. Even when standing Shao Kahn straight up without bending him over backwards, it leaves a blank skin tone area. It breaks up the design here and becomes an eyesore. This could have been better managed by just painting or molding this area in the same color as the strapping. One question I see over and over again is, why the black nipples? And honestly, I'm not sure. I watched footage from the latest game, the likeness in which the figure is based off of, and I don't see the black nipples there. I think it might have been better had Jazwares opted to just skip painting the nipples altogether and just left it in the same flesh tone as the chest. Shao Kahn's Wrath Hammer is adequately detailed enough. The only downside to it is that it is made from a softer plastic that can be a little too bendy. However, I'm still glad it was included. Alright, so let's go ahead and take a look at the articulation for this figure now. The head does not come ball jointed, so there is no nodding motion going on here. You can turn the head from left to right, but you can't fully rotate it. And that's due to this helmet right here hitting onto the spike armor. Now on the shoulder here we have a hinge, and it can go outward to about parallel to the floor, maybe just a little bit beyond that. You can fully rotate the shoulder. No bicep swivel here. At the elbow we have a single jointed hinge, and it can also fully swivel as well. At the wrist we can do a single jointed bend, and it can rotate all the way around. And one of the odd things about this figure is the right wrist is a little bit more limited in terms of bend than the left wrist. Has a little bit wider range of motion. You can go a little bit more than parallel to the gauntlet right here, whereas this one goes completely uniform to the other half of the gauntlet. Just a little odd. Now at the abdomen here we can do this crunch motion, which helps looking downward if you need to. Just some sort of foe that he might be fighting, or striking his wrath hammer down upon somebody. Now one of the downsides to this ab crunch is that when you wiggle it back and forth, it kind of creates this separation between the pelvic region here and the actual torso. But all you have to do is just push it back down, and it should be good to go. So moving on into the legs. You have a hinge here that can go outward, and you can also rotate this all sorts of directions, even fully swivel it around. You also have a swivel at the top of the thigh. Breaks up the design a little bit, but it depends how you're going to use it. Now at the knee we can do a single jointed bend and a full swivel. And at the ankle we can also do another single jointed bend with a swivel. No ankle pivot there this time. So one of the downsides I noticed to the legs is that trying to get him to stand up in kind of a pose a little bit wider than shoulder width apart, his legs kind of want to tend to spread. Not too bad here, I got it pretty well seated. But sometimes if you stand him on a slicker surface like some sort of table, I mean he's on fabric right now, but if he was on a table or something, his legs would want to spread apart. So it might be a little difficult to figure out how you want to stand him. But once you can get him actually in place and into a pretty cool pose, he's actually not too bad. The articulation is actually pretty impressive for what I've seen in the past from Jazwares. So actually I see this as a great sign of improvement, and look for more great things to come out of Jazwares pretty soon. So in my mind, with all things considering, I still find this to be a very cool figure. Granted, it's not a $70 figure with an overloaded amount of detail like a Play Arts Kai figure for instance, but at a price point of around $17.99, I find it well worth it. I've been waiting to get my hands on a figure of Shao Kahn, and this one does not disappoint. After getting it out of the package into my hands, I found that it was well worth it, and I even had a hard time putting him down. I hope somewhere down the line, Jazwares will begin to explore fight damaged figures. I mean, how cool would that be to even see fight damaged 2-packs? How about a victorious Liu Kang packaged alongside a Shao Kahn that has a hole in his chest left by the fist of Liu Kang? For more great toy reviews, be sure to subscribe to us here on YouTube. For WayCoolNews.net, I'm Mark, and this has been another Way Cool review.